The notification sound cut through the silence of my study at 3:47 a.m. I'd been working late on the quarterly reports for my consulting firm when my phone lit up with a voice message from my daughter-in-law, Rebecca. My hand froze over the keyboard. "Dad, it's Rebecca. I don't know if you'll get this. James, he's locked me in the spare bedroom. It's been 4 days now. Maybe 5? I've lost track. There's just a water bottle he slides under the door once a day. No food. The window's nailed shut. I tried screaming, but we're so far from the neighbors, and I'm so weak now. My hands are shaking. Please. I don't know how much longer I can." The message cut off abruptly. My blood ran cold. I was at my cabin in Muskoka, 3 hours north of Toronto, trying to escape the city for a few days of peace. James was my son, my only child, and Rebecca had been part of our family for 6 years now. I immediately tried calling back. Straight to voicemail. I called James. No answer. I called again, and again. Finally, on the 4th attempt, James picked up. "Dad, it's almost 4 a.m. What's wrong?" His voice was calm. Too calm. Like he'd been awake. "Where's Rebecca?" I demanded, my hands trembling as I stood up from my desk. "Rebecca? She's sleeping." "Dad, what's this about?" "Don't lie to me, James. I just got a voice message from her. She says you've locked her in a room for 4 days. There was a pause. A long, calculated pause that made my stomach turn. "Dad, Rebecca's been having episodes lately. Paranoid delusions. Her therapist said it might be a stress-induced psychotic break. She's been making up stories, accusing me of things. I've been trying to protect her, keep her safe, until we can get her properly evaluated. I was going to call you about it this week, but I didn't want to worry you unnecessarily. I'd been a corporate fraud investigator for 35 years before I retired. I knew when someone was constructing a lie in real time, the over-explanation, the medical jargon, the concern trolling. Let me talk to her. Right now. She's sedated, Dad. The doctor prescribed something to help her sleep. She's been so agitated." "What doctor? Give me their name." Another pause. "Dr. Amadi. At the Scarborough Health Network. Look, Dad, I know this sounds bad, but I promise you, I'm doing what's best for Rebecca. She needs help, professional help, and I'm making sure she gets it." Something was very wrong. Rebecca was one of the most level-headed people I'd ever met. She was a chartered accountant, for God's sake. Methodical, rational. The idea that she'd suddenly developed paranoid delusions didn't track. "I'm coming home. Don't do anything until I get there." "Dad, really? That's not necessary." I hung up and started throwing clothes into my overnight bag. The drive from Muskoka to their house in Markham would normally take 3 hours, but I made it in 2.25. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every slow driver on the 404 made me want to scream. I kept replaying Rebecca's message in my head. The weakness in her voice. The trembling. 4 or 5 days without food. That wasn't paranoid delusion. That was a cry for help. James and Rebecca lived in a sprawling 2-story house on a quiet cul-de-sac in Markham. It was the kind of neighborhood where everyone minded their own business, where expensive cars sat in driveways and privacy fences separated the manicured lawns. The kind of place where you could scream and no one would hear. I'd helped James with the down payment 3 years ago when he got his promotion at the software company. Rebecca had been so excited about having a home office where she could work on her accounting clients. James had seemed like the perfect husband back then. Attentive, supportive. When had things changed? I pulled into their driveway at 6:30 a.m. The sun was just starting to rise, casting long shadows across the frost-covered lawn. All the curtains were drawn. No lights on inside. I rang the doorbell, knocked, rang again. Finally, James opened the door. He was in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair disheveled like he'd just woken up, but his eyes were alert, sharp. "Dad, you really didn't need to drive all the way here." I pushed past him into the house. "Where is she?" "I told you. She's sleeping." "Which room?" James moved to block the staircase. He was taller than me, broader, 42 years old and in his prime. I was 68 with a bad knee and high blood pressure, but I'd be damned if I was going to back down. "Dad, you're not thinking clearly. You drove 3 hours in the middle of the night because of a confused voice message. Let's have some coffee. Talk about this rationally." "Get out of my way, James." Something flickered in his eyes, something cold. For a moment, I didn't recognize my own son. Then he stepped aside. I climbed the stairs, my knee protesting with each step. The hallway was dark. There were 4 doors: master bedroom, bathroom, James's home office, and the spare bedroom at the end of the hall. The spare bedroom door had a padlock on it, a brand new padlock, the kind you'd use on a storage locker. "James," I said quietly, my voice shaking with rage, "open this door. Right now. Dad, please. You don't understand. Open it, or I'm calling the police." He pulled out his phone, but not to call anyone. He showed me the screen. It was a photo of Rebecca, looking disheveled and wild-eyed, mascara smeared down her face. This is what she looked like 3 days ago. She attacked me, Dad, scratched my face, broke a lamp. I had to restrain her, for her own safety. The doctor said to keep her isolated until the medication kicked in. The photo looked staged. Too convenient. I pulled out my own phone and dialed 911. "What are you doing?" James lunged for my phone, but I stepped back, keeping the phone pressed to my ear. "Yes, I need police at 47 Brookside Crescent in Markham. My daughter-in-law is being held against her will." James's face transformed. The mask of concern dropped away, replaced by something ugly. Pure rage. "You're making a huge mistake, Dad. You're going to regret this. Open the door, James." He didn't move. We stood there in that dim hallway, father and son, staring at each other like strangers. The police arrived 12 minutes later. 2 officers, a man and a woman, both young and professional. I explained the situation, showed them Rebecca's voice message, pointed to the padlock. James immediately switched back to concerned husband mode. "Officers, thank God you're here. My wife has been experiencing a mental health crisis. I've been trying to keep her safe until we could get her properly evaluated. My father, unfortunately, doesn't understand the situation, and—" "Sir," the female officer interrupted, "we need to see your wife. Now." James hesitated. Then he pulled out a key from his pocket and unlocked the padlock. The smell hit me first. Urine. Sweat. Desperation. Rebecca was huddled in the corner of the room, wrapped in a thin blanket. Her dark hair was matted. Her lips were cracked and dry. She'd lost weight, her cheekbones sharp and prominent. When she saw us, she started crying. "Please," she whispered, "please get me out of here." The female officer immediately called for an ambulance, while the male officer secured James. I pushed past them and knelt beside Rebecca, my knees screaming in protest. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now." She collapsed against me, sobbing. She weighed nothing, absolutely nothing. At the hospital, the doctors said she was severely dehydrated and malnourished. She'd lost 14 pounds in 5 days, had bruising on her wrists and ankles, mild hypothermia from the unheated room, but she was alive. While Rebecca was being examined, I sat in the waiting room, trying to process what had happened. How had I missed this? What signs had I ignored? My ex-wife Claire arrived an hour later. We'd been divorced for 20 years, but she was still James's mother, and she had a right to know. When I told her what happened, she went pale. "I knew something was wrong," she said quietly. At Christmas dinner, Rebecca barely ate. She kept looking at James like she was afraid of him. But I thought I was reading too much into it. "How long has this been going on?" "I don't know. But remember last summer, when Rebecca said she couldn't come to your birthday dinner because she was sick? James said she had the flu." I did remember. Rebecca had sent me an apologetic text. I'd been disappointed but understanding. Now I wondered if she'd even written that text. When Rebecca was stable enough to talk, the police took her statement. What she told them made me physically ill. It had started 18 months ago, shortly after James got passed over for a promotion at work. He'd become increasingly controlling. Started checking her phone, questioned where she'd been, who she'd talked to. Small things at first. Things Rebecca had rationalized as stress from work. Then he started isolating her. Convinced her to quit her job at the accounting firm, told her she could work from home as a freelancer, said it would be better for them financially. She'd agreed, not realizing she was cutting off her last connection to the outside world. 6 months ago, James started locking her in the spare bedroom when he went to work, just for a few hours at first. "To keep you safe," he'd said, "so you don't hurt yourself." He'd convinced her she was having panic attacks. that she was a danger to herself. The duration increased. 4 hours became 8. 8 became 12. He'd slide food and water under the door, always measured portions, always controlled. 2 weeks ago, Rebecca had found his laptop open. There were folders full of photos of her, sleeping, changing, showering, years' worth of surveillance photos. She'd confronted him. He'd hit her for the first time. That's when the real imprisonment started. 5 days locked in that room with nothing but a water bottle changed out once a day. No food, no bathroom access except for a bucket. The window was nailed shut from the outside. James had taken her phone, but Rebecca had hidden an old phone in the heating vent months ago, just in case. That's what she'd used to call me. The police searched the house and found everything. The surveillance photos, a journal where James detailed his training program for Rebecca, emails to himself about teaching her respect, financial records showing he'd emptied her bank accounts and moved the money to accounts in his name only. They also found something else: restraints, zip ties, duct tape, a stun gun. The detective told me they believed James had been planning something worse. Much worse. James was charged with forcible confinement, assault, financial abuse, and criminal harassment. His lawyer tried to argue it was a domestic misunderstanding, but the evidence was overwhelming. At the bail hearing, I testified. So did Claire. So did Rebecca's former co-workers, who said she'd changed dramatically in the past year, become withdrawn and anxious. The judge denied bail. Rebecca stayed with me at my condo in Toronto while she recovered. For the first 2 weeks, she barely spoke. She'd wake up screaming, convinced she was still locked in that room. She couldn't eat much. The simplest decisions paralyzed her. I hired a trauma therapist who specialized in domestic violence survivors. Dr. Patricia Winters was a miracle worker, patient, kind. She helped Rebecca understand that what happened wasn't her fault, that James's behavior was about control and power, not anything she'd done wrong. Slowly, Rebecca started to heal. She gained weight back. The bruises faded. She started sleeping through the night, but some scars ran deeper. I kept thinking I could fix him, she told me one evening as we sat in my living room, watching the snow fall over Toronto. He'd be sweet and apologetic after hurting me, and I'd think, this is the real James. The other James is just stressed. I kept making excuses for him. That's what abusers do, I said. They condition you to doubt your own reality. I should have left sooner. He isolated you, controlled your money, made you dependent on him. Leaving isn't as simple as people think. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for not believing his lies. Always, I said, always. The trial was 8 months later. I sat through every day of testimony, listened to the forensic psychologist explain James's pattern of coercive control, watched Rebecca bravely recount her ordeal on the stand. James showed no remorse. Even when confronted with his own journal entries, the photos, the evidence, he maintained that he'd been trying to help Rebecca, that she'd been mentally unstable. The jury didn't believe him. James was convicted on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in federal prison, followed by a lifetime ban on contacting Rebecca. Mr. Morrison, the judge said, looking directly at James, you systematically abused, isolated, and tortured your wife. You exploited her trust and love to control every aspect of her life. You are a danger to society, and I hope you use your time in prison to reflect on the gravity of your actions. Claire was in the courtroom. She was crying. I don't think she was crying for James. I think she was crying for the son she thought she'd raised, the person he'd pretended to be. After the trial, Rebecca filed for divorce. It was finalized in 4 months. That was 3 years ago. Today, Rebecca lives in a bright apartment in the Annex neighborhood. She went back to school and got her CPA designation. She works at a nonprofit that provides financial planning services to domestic violence survivors. She's dating someone new, a kind teacher named Marcus, who treats her with respect and patience. She still has nightmares sometimes, still flinches at unexpected noises, but she's built a life for herself, a good life, a free life. I see her every Sunday for brunch at our favorite cafe on Bloor Street. We talk about her work, her friends, her future plans. Sometimes we talk about James, but not often. He's serving his sentence at a prison in Kingston. He writes letters sometimes, claiming he's changed, asking for forgiveness. Rebecca doesn't read them. I wasted 6 years of my life on him, she told me last month. I'm not wasting another minute. Last year, Rebecca and I started a foundation together. It's called Safe Harbor, and it provides emergency financial assistance and legal support to people escaping abusive relationships. We've helped 43 people so far. Helped them leave. Helped them rebuild. Every person we help, I think about that voice message at 3:47 a.m. about how close we came to losing Rebecca entirely. Claire and I have rebuilt our relationship somewhat, not as spouses, but as two people united in guilt and determination. We volunteer together at Safe Harbor. She talks to groups about recognizing warning signs of abuse in adult children, about not making excuses for inexcusable behavior. I kept telling myself he was just stressed, she said during one presentation, that he was going through a rough patch. I ignored my instincts because I didn't want to believe my son could be capable of such cruelty. That was my failure. My terrible failure. The audience was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then everyone. Because that's what we do. We ignore the signs. We make excuses. We convince ourselves that people we love couldn't possibly be monsters. But monsters rarely look like monsters. They look like your son, your brother, your best friend. They're charming in public and cruel in private. They isolate and control and convince their victims that the abuse is somehow justified, somehow deserved. I've learned some hard lessons over these past years, lessons I wish I'd known sooner. First, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let someone talk you out of what you know to be true. Second, isolation is one of the biggest red flags. When someone starts cutting their partner off from friends, family, work, financial independence, that's not love, that's control. Third, abuse escalates. It starts small and grows. The person who tracks their partner's phone today may be the person who locks them in a room tomorrow. Fourth, victims often can't see what's happening to them. They're too close, too conditioned, too afraid. It takes outside intervention to break the cycle. And fifth, the most important lesson, healing is possible. Rebecca is living proof. She went through hell, and she came out the other side stronger. Not unchanged, not undamaged, but surviving, fighting, helping others. If you're reading this, if any of this sounds familiar, whether you're the victim or the concerned friend or family member, please listen to me. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are not imagining things. Abuse is real. Control is real. And it happens in every neighborhood, every income bracket, every community. It happens to smart people, strong people, people who never thought it could happen to them. In Canada, we have resources. The Assaulted Women's Helpline operates 24/7. 1-866-863-0511. Shelters across the country provide safe housing. Legal aid can help with restraining orders and divorce proceedings. Organizations like Safe Harbor provide financial assistance. You don't have to stay. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to keep giving chances to someone who keeps hurting you. You deserve safety. You deserve respect. You deserve freedom. And to the people watching from the sidelines, wondering if you should get involved, wondering if it's really as bad as it seems, I'll tell you what I wish I'd told myself years ago. Get involved. Make the call. Ask the difficult questions. Don't accept excuses. Don't look away. Because that voice message at 3:47 a.m. saved Rebecca's life. But she shouldn't have had to wait until she was locked in a room for 5 days to get help. She should have had someone recognize the signs months earlier, years earlier. Be that someone. I still have Rebecca's voice message saved on my phone. Sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I listen to it. Not because I want to relive that horror, but because I need to remember. I need to remember how close we came to losing her. I need to remember that silence kills. I need to remember that speaking up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it damages relationships, even when people call you paranoid or overprotective, that speaking up saves lives. James will be eligible for parole in 2 years. Rebecca has already said she'll attend the hearing to give her victim impact statement. She's not afraid of him anymore. He took enough from me, she said. He doesn't get to take my voice too. That's the Rebecca I know. The Rebecca who survived. The Rebecca who refused to be broken. Every Sunday, when we meet for brunch, I look at her across the table, and I feel grateful. Grateful that I listened to my instincts. Grateful that I made that drive from Muskoka. Grateful that Rebecca had the presence of mind to hide that phone. But mostly, I feel angry. Angry that it came to that. Angry at all the warning signs I missed. Angry at a society that teaches victims to be polite, to give second chances, to keep family problems private. So I'm telling this story. Not to shame James, though he deserves shame. Not to paint myself as a hero, because I'm not one. I'm telling this story because somewhere, right now, someone is locked in a room. Someone is being controlled, isolated, abused. Someone is making a desperate call for help, and someone needs to answer. Be the person who answers. Be the person who believes them. Be the person who acts, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when everyone else is looking away. Because that 3:47 a.m. voice message changed everything. And your willingness to listen, to act, to care, could change everything for someone else. Don't wait until it's too late.